Unity Kitchener. This is Wendy Karr, licensed Unity teacher. Congratulations from me and from Unity Halton Peel on your 50th anniversary. I was so glad to be able to attend today's service and luncheon, and boy, was that delicious. So thank you for that. I had a few thoughts, and rather than try to write them down, I thought I'd put them together in a video, and if you want to splice it up and make it into smaller ones, please go ahead. But as I say, I've got a few thoughts to share. So if you were to ask me what's my relationship to Unity Kitchener, I would say that it's like having your BFF where you hang out. You know, you were never my home church, really. Well, briefly, but we'll get into that in a moment. Uh, so one of the very first things that I did after joining Unity in 1984 was I attended a workshop with Reverend Joe Harris about meditation. So I learned that from one of the best. And a little side story that's not really mine to share, but I found it in my archives. And when Joe Harris passed, Reverend David Dirksen, who was greatly involved in Unity Canada, particularly out in BC, thanked and noted that she had identified that he had dyslexia, and she provided him with some guidance for overcoming that and being able to work with his needs as a speaker. And he thanked her for that, and he reminded Reverend Sharon and everyone of that piece of information about her. She had been a teacher before becoming a minister. So for me personally, I think the very first time I spoke at Kitchener was at Kingsway, and I'm going to say it was around 1999. I don't think it was later than that. It was before Reverend Sharon showed up because you still had your interim minister, and I was filling in. And I think it was the first time that I had spoken where I had such a huge platform, such a huge congregation. And yet you guys trusted me with that, and I appreciate that. Over the years, I have been blessed to not only speak, but provide teaching and workshops and attend concerts and seminars that you folks presented. And back in 2000, or maybe it was 99, the memory is not quite 100% sure. My mentoring minister, Reverend Lila Hancock, was married by Joe Harris at Kitchener. And I was one of the bridesmaids, so I got to participate in that. So that was very special and an opportunity. So over time, I look back and I see how many times Kitchener kind of was there for me. I taught my very first course on Zoom at Kitchener as a hybrid class, and we met up in the boardroom. We had the TV there, and we had a couple students that were online. And so some of us sitting in the room would have the class while we had others, as I say, on Zoom. So that would have been the fall of 2018, long before COVID. And as Cheryl mentioned, when someone else mentioned it, I was the speaker the first Sunday that we were in lockdown, and trying desperately to figure out how to make this whole thing work of live streaming. And it was a challenge, and yet it gave me the opportunity to practice. And now, so many years later, I'm somewhat competent with it. But it was Kitchener that gave me that opportunity. Reverend Sharon mentioned when her daughter was in that serious accident. And it just happened that I was at Unity Halton Peel as the guest speaker that day at my home center. And so I was able to lead a prayer with our congregation. So not only was Kitchener praying, but Halton Peel was as well. You may recall that Halton Peel used to be called Unity of Mississauga, and that was where Sharon came from. So there's a connection there as well. And many years ago in 2002, when it was decided that Canada would have its own region and its own national school, Reverend Sharon, Reverend Jane Simmons, as she is now, and myself met together at the Tim Hortons at number 6 and number 401. We used to call that Holy Tim's. It was kind of a mutually convenient spot. And we organized how we were going to run this national school. Who knew that, about 20 years later, we would be doing our classes in Canada over Zoom in a way that wasn't possible back then. But Kitchener was the home address and the home place for funds to be funneled through for Unity Canada. And it still is for the classes that we facilitate online for the outgoing SEE, the spiritual education and enrichment courses. Things will change as we move to 100% of the courses being taught at headquarters or through Canadian instructors. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. And one little story I need to share. I don't have permission, but too bad. Reverend Susan, when she was going through that, there was talk about the challenges that she had after 9/11 getting through into the States for her education. I was working at the Brampton Courthouse with a judge who had hired Susan pretty much out of law school and was really impressed with her. And once he found out that I knew her, our relationship changed. He could be very difficult and demanding, but because I knew Susan, my life got a whole bunch easier. So I guess that's practicing the unity principle, right? Applying it. And I'll edit out the profanity, but he would go on about, well, if a former Crown attorney wants to become a minister, then why the heck aren't they letting her into the States? And how stupid is that? And I'd hear all about that from his chambers to our courtroom, and then we'd pause, and he'd get into his space, and I'd get into my space, and I'd open the door and do the, order all rise, the Honorable Judge so-and-so presiding. But it was really wonderful when he and I had that connection. And from time to time, he'd say, so how's she doing? And what's happening? And how's school going for her? So that was a really nice thing. If you've worked in the judicial system and in any form of the justice system, whether it's the prisons or the restorative justice or the courthouses, you'll know that it can be a really difficult place to work. And so I was so grateful that not only did I have my unity principles, but I had proof that they worked in practice. So again, congratulations on your 50th. I am looking forward to being able to attend from time to time in your new space. And it's a wonderful space. I love the color. I love the brightness. And thank you for all you have done, giving me opportunities to speak and to teach and to share my gifts with your congregation. And I love all of you, and I'll see you real soon. Blessings. Hi again. So this is a little add-on because I realized I forgot something really important, and that was Unity of Guelph Study Group. How could I forget that? So Reverend Sharon came to my then minister, Reverend Pat Ball, and asked if my late husband, Bill, who was also a licensed Unity teacher, and I would like to meet up with Ellen, who was the licensed teacher at Kitchener at the time, and the three of us would help to run a study group in Guelph with the assistance administratively of Diane Everest, who is much missed by me and others. And so we did that for a number of years. I'm not sure how many years. I'd have to look back on my calendar. But the blessing of that, and probably the biggest blessing of that, was I figured out I wasn't cut out for ministry before I went through seminary. I realized that my purpose in Unity and in my life was to teach, especially to teach those who have a calling to ministry or to become a licensed Unity teacher. And if you look at the licensed teachers and to some extent the ministers in the last 25 years while I've been credentialed, quite a few of them have had me as an instructor over time. And so Reverend Susan made a comment about that, and I thank you for that. But yeah, I am here to teach. And I think I'm here to teach Bible because I love teaching it. And that's in part thanks to Reverend Sharon, who took me under her wing and taught me a whole bunch of things about the Bible and provided me with handouts of her materials and really got me interested in the Gospel of Thomas and some of the other extra canonical writings. So, as I said at the beginning, Unity Kitchener has been like my bestie's house next door or down the street where I can just go and hang out and be accepted and learn and grow and still have my own family at home. So thank you again. This ends the PS, and I will see you in July when I come back and speak in person. Love you all. Bye.